Hello, friends. Today I want to talk about something very important. I want to talk about therapy. If you guys don't know, I did online therapy prior to, so at the beginning of my weight loss. And basically, I lost the first, I would like to say around 50 pounds. Maybe less, just by going to therapy and addressing inherent issues that were a part of my life, and how I was dealing with stress, and how I was dealing with what was happening in my life. And the reason why I wanted to touch at this topic exclusively is because while I feel that I have touched upon it in a surface way, in terms of, yes, it helps you deal with little things, I did want to dive into the specific matter, which is the everyday dealings. So part of what I used to see, or rather log in to see my therapist once a week. And what that entailed is conversations about how I was dealing with my life. And like, for example, if there was an instance at work or in my personal life, it would be a conversation about what happened, how I would deal with it, and what, in reflection, what tools I could have used. At that time, of course, I was still doing things that were not necessarily pro health in terms of, BINGE, and there were also things that I was doing in terms of having one day where I would just drink quite a bit. So how I started to minimize was through conversations. And I think it's very important to note that because what ended up happening is not necessarily was I tackling the everyday situations, but I was also diving into how I was dealing with food, in terms of because at the end of the day, when you, for example, you say to yourself, or something happens like, oh, I was in a birthday party, and I decided that I was going to, or at that time I drank, and then I didn't see what I was eating, and then the next day, for example, I would feel awful. There would be a conversation with a therapist about that very thing, and removing the guilt aspect of it, and the strategies that you could use in terms of how to deal with a birthday next time it happens. And I think there's value in that. I don't know that weight loss is individualized in terms of, like, I don't know that every person that needs to lose weight would find beneficial therapy, but I think that a large amount of us would, just because even just from the surface level, conversations get you to reflect on your own strategies that you are actually that you're naturally using in order to deal with situations. And then what happens is that there becomes a little bit of a shift, right? The therapist doesn't necessarily have to give you any insight, but the conversation can lead you to your own insight. Now, this leads me to another topic I wanted to touch. The famous Bridgeton, the last season, and specifically to do with all the discussions that are happening in terms of how Nicola is not, that it just really doesn't make sense that someone like colon would fall for someone that is fat. And the reason why I bring this up is because I think a lot of people find that their body weight that they do not deserve the same amount of I don't know, like love, understanding, and compassion as people that are slimmer. And I think that it typically what we see when we see something that it's odd to us, because what is the colloquial conversation here, that an equally handsome person would choose somebody as handsome? Well, I don't know. I don't think that that's actually the case, because inherently, while we all think that, and we all think bad about ourselves, is that I think that eventually, that gets you only to the door, but really you end up loving the person and what the person brings to the table in terms of insight, compassion, kindness. And I think inherently we all know that. But how do I tie this into a conversation about therapy? It's because, in my personal opinion, that's the inherent problem that we all need to tackle. Is the deserving part of it. Is the fact that we have to understand that we all, as human beings, just by default, regardless of whether we are a size 0 or a size 2 or a size 20, that we're all deserving. We can get that guy. We absolutely can. Now that the person's not in the same sphere as you are, that's another conversation altogether. But that the therapy should involve the inherent understanding that you're deserving. You're deserving of weight loss. You're deserving of dealing with your situations. You're deserving of therapy. Now, the last thing I wanted to have a conversation about this is the fact that I think it's important to note that whenever we get really triggered by these things, is that instead of latching out and making articles about how this is not sexy, and agreeing with it and having it and then stomping on the fact that yes, how is she dating him, is that we must sort of reflect, or we must reflect on why are we triggered. Why is this problematic in our mind? Because it's not, you're not part of the equation, correct? Like, whoever, let's pretend that, a lady who's a size 22 is dating a guy that's, that is, like, that does a lot of exercise and looks like David from the David in Rome, right? Like, does it matter? No, it doesn't. So something about the relationship or the dynamics is triggering. So I think therapy brings all this into light, and it brings it into perspective of how it is that, why is it affecting you, and why can't you imagine that being you? Because at the end of the day, therapy is to align you to the image that you have of yourself that is your ideal. That the image that you are featuring yourself in the future needs to collide with your current person at some point in time, and that person is very much deserving, just as the person that you're now is very much deserving of love, understanding, and support. Anyway, I hope you like this discussion, and I will see you Thursday. Bye-bye.